the AI podcast.
Ever heard of an EUC?
And
No, I don't mean your buddy who's glued to the coffee machine.
Right.
We're talking electric unicycles. Those things that look like they rolled out a sci-fi flick.
yeah.
And get this, there's a whole crew of folks zipping around New York City on these things. Led by a guy, a bit of a legend, goes by the name EUC XR. So buckle up. We're diving headfirst into the world of EUCs and this whole subculture right here in the concrete jungle.
It's kind of wild, right? I mean, we're so used to thinking about cars, buses, subways.
Usual suspects.
Yeah, exactly. But this is different. It's like they're rewriting the rules of how we move through the city.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dig into today. Now, full disclosure, our source material for this deep dive is, well, let's just say it's passionate.
Oh, yeah.
It's less of a, formal report and more like someone threw a love letter to EUCs into a wood chipper, sprinkled in some internet slang and hit send.
And you know what? I kind of love that. It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it gives us this awesome glimpse into a world that, frankly, most of us wouldn't even know existed.
100%. And right off the bat, the source dives into one of the biggest perks of riding an EUC in the city that never sleeps. Never dealing with traffic again.
Can you imagine? I mean, we all dream about it, right?
Every single day.
But for these guys, it's not a dream, it's a reality. They're zipping through gridlock while we're stuck honking our horns and wishing for a teleport button.
Talk about freedom. But it's more than just practicality, right? This source is basically a hype squad for this one rider, EUC XR.
Oh yeah, they drop his name like it's hot.
Seriously. They're like, EUC XR this, EUC XR that. The guy's practically a rock star in the EUC world.
Which I think speaks to something really interesting about these niche communities, especially online. You've got these figures, these influencers, who emerge and really become the face of the movement. They're not just doing the thing, they're documenting it, they're building community around it, they're inspiring others to join in. And that brings us to the ever-growing crew EUC XR seems to roll with.
Oh yeah, we're talking like a whole roster of names here. Loss, Nick, Ash, Billy, even a brave Dave got a shout out. They even gave a shout out to his dog, Nala.
It's like a who's who of the NYC EUC scene. And then you've got these group names, right? Ran, Ride All Night, and my personal favorite, Marked for Deletion.
I mean, come on, Marked for Deletion, that's got to be the name of a band.
Right. It's a little ominous, a little tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But it speaks to this, inherent risk involved, right?
For sure.
These guys are pushing the limits, not just of what these machines can do, but also of what's acceptable, Like they're challenging the very notion of what belongs in a city and how we should move through it.
And speaking of pushing limits, these guys aren't just cruising around the block. They're taking on all of New York City. I mean, they're talking Manhattan, Central Park, even the Bronx got a shout out.
And that's a really important point. They're not just riding through these spaces. They're claiming them. They're reframing how we see the urban landscape. Suddenly, Central Park isn't just for carriage rides and hot dog vendors anymore. It's an EUC playground.
So, I got to ask, have you ever ridden in EUC? Because, to the average Joe like me, these things still seem kind of intimidating.
I'll be honest, I haven't. And yeah, there's definitely a learning curve. You're basically balancing on a motorized wheel.
Exactly.
But that's part of the appeal, right? It takes skill. It takes practice. It's not as simple as hopping on a bike. And once you master it, it's this incredible feeling of freedom and agility.
Almost like you're defying gravity or something.
Exactly. And let's not forget the environmental aspect. These things run on electricity. They're quiet, they don't pollute, and they take up way less space than a car.
True. It's like, what if this little niche community is actually onto something big? Like, what if EUCs went mainstream?
Right. Imagine cities designed for EUCs. Sidewalks would need to adapt, maybe even expand. We'd probably see dedicated EUC lanes popping up everywhere. And think about how that would change our relationship with transportation. Suddenly, commuting could be exhilarating.
No more road rage.
Well, maybe a little EUC rage, but you get the point. This source, as scrappy and passionate as it is, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Sure.
It's a glimpse into a subculture that's not just about a mode of transportation. It's about pushing boundaries, about freedom, about community, and maybe even a little bit about sticking it to the man.
And you know what really gets me about this whole thing? It's that level of dedication. This isn't just a hobby for these guys. It's a way of life.
Totally.
It reminds us that passion can bloom in the most unexpected places. And it makes you wonder, What other hidden worlds are out there? What other communities are thriving just below the surface, driven by shared interests, a little bit of daredevil spirit, and a whole lot of love for something most of us wouldn't even notice? Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.